Hey, this is Zach Log the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate
I am a burrito.
and Travis,
Hello, everyone.
who is not a burrito. And we are getting together tonight to talk about Rudyard Kipling's poem, The Power of the Dog, which Travis has volunteered to read for us. Before he gets to that, a couple of quick things. If you like my work, if you like my channel, you want to help support it, you can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great to do so, and the link is going to be in the description. I would like to say thank you to Ann H. as one of my regular supporters, and also I am currently writing a book, novella, I guess, by the time it's done, and I'm publishing it serially on a blog. It's called The Mayor of Christ Mountain. It is a revenge story. And if you're at all interested, you can find that at zachlog.wordpress.com. And that is going to be in the show description as well. Having said that, like I said, Travis has volunteered to read the poem for us tonight. So I am going to get that up on the screen. And where's that button? I'm going to get that up on the screen, and we are going to let Travis take over.
All right. The Power of the Dog, Rudyard Kipling. There is sorrow enough in the natural way from men and women to fill our day. And when we are certain of sorrow in store, why do we always arrange for more? Brothers and sisters, I bid you beware of giving your heart to a dog to tear. Buy a pup and your money will buy love unflinching that cannot lie. Perfect passion and worship fed by a kick in the ribs or a pat on the head. Nevertheless, it is hardly fair to risk your heart for a dog to tear. When 14 years, which nature permits, are closing in asthma or tumor or fits, and the vet's unspoken prescription runs to lethal chambers or loaded guns, then you will find it's your own affair, but you've given your heart to a dog to tear. When the body that lived at your single will with its whimper of welcome is stilled, how still? When the spirit that answered your every mood is gone, wherever it goes, for good, you will discover how much you care and will give your heart to a dog to tear. We've sorrow enough in the natural way when it comes to burying Christian clay. Our loves are not given, but only lent, at compound interest of cent per cent. Though it is not always the case, I believe, that the longer we've
Travis?
kept them, the more we do grieve. Yeah.
Sorry, you cut out for just a second there.
I didn't hear that. I think it's only.
Okay, my problem then. Go ahead.
All right. I'll start back over at we've sorrow enough in the natural way when it comes
Now he cut out.
but only lent at it's probably my internet. Someone else want to read that last stanza so we get through it?
Yeah, I got it.
Go ahead.
We've sorrow enough in the natural way when it comes to burying Christian clay. Our loves are not given, but only lent, at compound interest of cent per cent. Though it is not always the case, I believe, that the longer we kept them, the more do we grieve. For when debts are payable, right and or wrong, a short time loan is as bad as a long. So why, in heaven, before we are there, should we give our hearts to a dog to tear?
Okay. So, since Travis read most of it, Nate, would you like to start us off with your thoughts on this one?
I saw a meme once that said all of this in 2 lines. And it said, everybody that gets, like, every time I think of getting a dog, I'm always like, man, I'm setting myself up to have a really horrible day in about 12 years. And I'm like, you are so weak. I get it. I have lost dogs that I still get teary-eyed over. I mean, that line with its whimper of welcome is stilled. How still? Yeah, I've been there, and it hurts so much. At the same time, if you forgo over a decade of love and joy and just, faithful companionship because you know it's going to hurt in the end, you're a loser. I mean, do you not sleep because you know you'll wake up? Do you not eat because you know one day you'll be hungry again? Do you not start a song because you know eventually it'll go quiet? I mean, seriously, what's wrong with this? Like I said, I mean, yes, you're gonna be sad when the dog dies, but you're gonna get so much more joy out of it. Just it's a worthwhile trade. You should do it. And this poem gets on my nerves because it's true enough. Yes, it's gonna hurt when the dog dies. You are giving your heart to a dog you care. But you win in that trade.
In Kipling's defense, I'm 90% sure this was written by someone who had dogs and most likely would have a dog again after this was written. I don't think this was, serious advice not to get a dog.
No, I'm willing to bet this was written about 4 hours after his dog died, and he just back. Because Rudyard Kipling is not a giant foot cake. But at the same time, I know people that are seriously like this, and I'm like, I will beat your ass.
Well, and it's well, and it reminds me of the old joke. What do you get when you play a country song backwards? You get your truck back, you get your dog back, you get your job back.
And sober.
That probably happens too. But yeah, it's I am not a dog person myself. I don't hate them. I just don't I didn't grow up around them, and I don't like them enough to want to have one. They are significantly more work than cats, but I will say, I see how dogs act around their people, and I have a soul, so I get it. At least a little bit, I get it. Even if it's not, exactly my thing. But Travis, how about you?
Oh, I guess I'm sort of with Nate. I mean, I grew up with dogs on the farm, and they always managed to get themselves killed somewhere early on in life. So
Yeah.
I mean, I was used. By the time I got to college, I was pretty used to saying goodbye to dogs. And one in college, she just disappeared. We'd had her for like 2 years, and she just literally disappeared. But yeah, I think it's worth the pain, and I don't know. I mean, I was sad when my dog died, but she was old. I knew it was coming. She had lymphoma. This is the dog that I actually lived. I'd never lived with a dog in the house. She lived with me, went in the truck with me when I was working, and I don't know. I mean, it was sad, but it's kind of it's her time, it was time.
Yeah. I mean, One of the hardest things I've ever done in my life was we had a litter of puppies that got infected with some kind of bacteria, and like they were melting. Like they would get lesions and just like they were too little to survive it. And so as they each one in turn got infected and it took hold of them, like I would go ahead and shoot them because they were going to die in suffering and I could prevent that. So it's like, well, okay, it's time for final mercy. And I'm here to tell you, it is not fun to shoot an entire litter of puppies one by one over the course of a couple of weeks. But like we'd move them around and it kept coming up. We're like, we don't know what is doing this to them, but there wasn't anything we could do about it. So yeah, it's not all sunshine.
It is not.
But I would not trade Buck and Dottie and Trooper and Slash and freaking Bishop and Copper and Dixie and Jeremiah and Sam and all those critters for anything. Well, okay, my own children, yes, but few things beside.
Yeah, and it's there's actually a video of my a standalone video of my own I did that kind of touched on this subject, and it's like if you have anything you like seriously care about, and it doesn't matter what it is, if it's a dog or like it's some kind of project that you're putting that it's not just something you're fiddling around with, but something that matters to you. Like, if there's anything outside of yourself that you care about, in the very act of caring about something outside yourself, you are making yourself vulnerable. You are, making a way where someone can hurt you. And I mean, the most obvious example of this is when you have kids and oh, by the way, your heart is now walking around independent of your body, and someone could relatively easily absolutely wreck you without being anywhere near you, but at the same time, like the alternative is to wall yourself off and not invest in anything, not put your heart into anything, not like have no passions, not even no people, no pets, not even, like I said, some kind of project, some kind of work that you really care about. And
that's why I never understood the attraction of Buddhism.
Meaning
attachments give us like this
what?
whole this whole idea that you should seek to let go of attachments, and I'm like, why? The attachments give me strength and they give me purpose. They help me to direct my will, and so I find the things I'm attached to are the best things in my life. And so I don't think I'm going to gain any enlightenment by letting them go and suddenly becoming detached. I'm like, I feel like you can't understand a world you're not a part of.
Well, and yeah, it's and that is one thing that's kind of interesting. Some people say, well, the religions of the world, they pretty much teach kind of the same moral principles, and they're kind of aim to the same thing, and it's like, no, not really. Like, okay, don't kill, don't murder, don't steal, don't like these basic moral rules are largely the same, but like the entire idea behind them and the where the religion is pointing you to is a very different kind of thing. And Buddhism says, the fact that you want something is the problem. And if we can get rid of that wanting, then that is enlightenment. And Christianity says, no, these desires were given to you by God. By the way, almost all of them have gone astray in some fashion. We need to get them back in line, but they were given to you by God. They are good things, and if you get them in line, they can help point you to God Himself. And that's why in Christianity, the images, how it teaches us about God and heaven is actually through these desires. The Christ and the church is a marriage. And He is, and God is our Father. And how do we meet God? What is one thing we're commanded to do? We eat Him. Either depending on what denomination, either in symbol or some say literal actually, but how do we meet Him? Through the act of eating. Christianity says these desires are good things. We just need to get them back in line. And it's an entirely different framework, and it will, in the end, lead you to a very different thing. Whichever one is right. I think it's Christianity, but they're not pointing the same direction ultimately.
And so the reason we can get back to the poem about dogs is that, this is all said these dogs are a distraction. Because you're wondering, eventually, how torn will my heart be? I think that was a decent segue to get back to the poem, right?
That works.
All right.
Let me take a look. Let me take a look and see if there's a particular. Well, and it's kind of fascinating and in a way horrible, but like in the second stanza he says perfect passion and worship fed by a kick in the ribs or a pat on the head, and it's like yeah, I mean you can push it too far, but like on the whole, like your dog, however you treat him, he's your dog, and he's going to follow you and do what you and well, not necessarily do what you say all the time, but like he's your dog and he's loyal to you. Um, and then, yeah.
Two different things from very vastly different times, illustrating the same thing over and over again. One was an inscription on a gravestone in a Roman cemetery. It said, okay, emotions, calm down. Sorry, choked up for a minute. The minute is extending. Give me a moment.
Take your time.
It says, how I weep as I carry you to rest. It says, yeah, how I weep as I carry you to rest is the same as the joy I felt when I brought you home in my own arms, or something very similar to that. And it's like, yeah, this man had his dog and he loved that dog, and the dog finally died. He actually paid to have it buried and memorialized. And then I saw it was a Control Alt Delete or something comic And the guy was playing a Fallout game, and it was like, oh man, we finally, saved everybody, and everything's great, and this is wonderful. And then he looks over and realizes that his companion dog had been killed in the last fight, and he's like, oh no. And he's like, where's my last save point? And it was hours ago. And he's like, and like, everything looks nice, and the background's cool, and everything's good, and everyone's like, you're a hero. And then it resets, and there's just like monsters coming out of everywhere and gunfire. But he's sitting there petting the dog, and he's like, in the end, you got to have you with me. Or I was just like, yeah,
It's
gotta have the dog.
So this is translation. So obviously, how the translation comes out, differs. I am in tears while carrying you to your last resting place, as much as I rejoiced when bringing you home in my own hands 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And
so I guess I would say about this poem, sort of the sentiment of it, which he's just kind of asking the question and saying, oh, I'm hurting. But, should you get a dog? Is it worth the pain in the end?
Unequivocally, yes.
And there you go. That's Nate's response. Not everyone would necessarily say so, but I think a lot of the people who would say it's not worth the pain are probably the same ones that when they have the dog and it's 15 years old and it has lymphoma are trying to give it cancer treatments because they don't know how to let go and say goodbye and mourn and go get another dog. I don't know. I mean, that's a concept that I don't understand. Prolonging the dog's suffering because you don't want to say goodbye. Which I don't know if that technically comes up in this poem, but it's dancing around it, I suppose.
Well, the vet's unspoken prescription runs to lethal chambers or loaded guns.
Right.
It's like, we need to put this dog down.
Right.
Like, there's no saving it. All you're going to do is, like you said, is you're going to make it linger. Yeah.
Well, and it's... I don't know.
What?
Sorry, I had a different kind of direction in mind, but what was I going to? Yeah. Oh, I was kind of thinking about people and mourning for their dogs, and slightly different direction, but I was like I said, we don't have a dog. I'm not a dog person. I like them fine. I just at least not yet enough to have one in our house. But like I was thinking about there's these action movies the past several years, John Wick, and we have a cat. Like, it is inconceivable that a movie like that would start with someone shooting the guy's cat. It just wouldn't work. But shooting the guy's dog, you're like, yeah, I can see where I can see where that's going.
And the government murdered a kid, for trying to avenge his dog.
I don't know this one.
Ruby Ridge, they shot this dog.
Oh, okay.
And that's why the kid came out and opened fire on him, and so they shot him too.
I didn't know quite. I am somewhat familiar with that story, but I didn't know that part of it. Yes. I actually, there's I was listening to a live stream with Vox Day not long ago, and he said there was a book he was working on a while ago, which I don't think ever came out, but he said, like, going through all this research, he's like, it's pretty clear that the most dangerous single thing in the average human being's life is their own government.
Wait,
It's
what was that again?
the most dangerous single thing in the average human being's life is their own government. Far more likely to kill you than just about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh yeah, that's
And who said that?
Vox Day. It's a pen name, but that's what he usually goes by. Political commentator.
Yeah.
Science fiction author, game designer. He's done quite a few things. But yeah, and
Oh wow. Huh. Sorry to interrupt. Phone is imminently dying, so
well, we usually
we're having to give our conversation to a phone to abbreviate.
we usually go longer than this, but I guess we can, due to battery issues, I guess we can wrap this one up early, and that'll be okay. And hopefully we'll be getting together again before too long. So, Nate, do you have any abruptly prompted last thoughts before you go either voluntarily or suddenly disappeared by phone battery death?
I have never known a person who lived with a dog that didn't become a dog person. I think that I fully agree with the statement that every dog needs a boy and every boy needs a dog, and girls too. And girls, so they can have an example of loyalty as they get older. But no, I am a dog person deep down in my soul. I love dogs. I will always love dogs, and I fully understand this poem. I have lived this poem numerous times, and all I can tell you is there were years where I didn't have a dog because I couldn't. And when I got my new house and was like, hey, we're not rentoids anymore. We have our own place. We can get a dog. Well, my wife was like, well, let's, be measured and steady about this. And I was like, yeah. And then like 2 weeks later, we heard about some people giving away a puppy. And I was like, puppy. And I am here to tell you, I have not been, aside from bringing home my children from the hospital, there have been few car trips where I've been that happy. Is when I was riding back with the dog and being like, okay, Pooch, I'm your master. We're going to get along great as long as you listen. We will love each other. And you will respect me. And it'll be awesome. And if you can't respect me, you'll have to fear me. But we're going to do okay. You're going to listen. And you know what? I think he got it. He took it on board because mostly he listens. Mostly.
That's about as much as you can ask for from dogs or children. Mostly they listen. Travis, and you can't ask for that at all from cats. It's just not going to work.
No, they don't listen at all.
Travis, any last thoughts from you?
I guess just sort of the same old stuff. It's it's worth having a dog. It's worth mourning. Mourning is a part of life, and I think we too often try to circumvent it or do a poor job of it instead of actually just feeling it, gutting it out, and just living through the awfulness of it. So I think dogs are great practice because it hurts to lose a dog, but it's really shitty to lose a human. So I think that's another point to be made. Like, it's hard to lose a dog, but it's a lot harder to lose your brother. So And they're both well worth the investment.
Yeah, and the one thing I was gonna wanted to say, it's like, yes, you are setting yourself up for pain, but that's just, and same thing with having kids, by the way. It doesn't matter how well you plan things, there is going to be pain in some fashion. And
Step on your nuts.
that will happen. Anyway, but like, that's part of life. And if you try, like, if you make your goal, if you make your guiding principle to avoid pain, what you're really doing is avoiding life. And there's, like, you have to accept that. You have to find a way to reconcile yourself to that, to really be alive and really be fully human, I guess. And like Travis said, dogs are good practice. It's because guess what? You're gonna lose people too, and unless you become a complete hermit, there's not much of a way to avoid that. And so dealing, losing a dog a couple times is not at all fun. But guess what? By the time you get to losing a parent or losing a friend, you'll be a little more ready. Anyway. So a little shorter than usual, but things happen. Thank you both for joining me, and God be with you.
And
So with you.
Oh my gosh, I had the poem on the screen the entire time.